Hey guys, Bound to Divide here with Ableton Tips, and today we're going to be making a selected style house loop in the style of Yuma's Meds remix. And if you want to follow along, make sure you download all the MIDI and the samples. They'll be provided in the link below. And let's get started. Okay, so I always like to start my tracks with drones. So let's start off by making the drone, and here's the MIDI for it. If you haven't downloaded it and you just want to see the notes, these are the notes. We're working in D minor, and we basically just got a D minor chord with a D on the top too, so it's just an octave higher. And this is going to be a really simple sound. We're going to be using analog, and we're pretty much just going to leave it stock standard. The only thing we're going to be doing is adding some unison to it. So this is how it currently sounds. And we're going to add some detune to it. Around there sounds nice. And then the trick with this is to really just add a ton of reverb to it. Because of the unison, it already moves around quite a lot. It's already evolving. So we don't need to do that much more to the source sound. Now we just need to add a bunch of reverb. And I'm just going to bring this up really high, like 90%. And I'm also going to increase the decay. Let's bring it up really high, like 26 seconds. And then just hear how that sounds. Okay. Yeah, that works. Now all we need to do is grab an EQ. And what I want to do with this EQ is kind of just filter out all the highs and lows so that we're left with a very small amount of frequencies in the mid-range. And that's going to push the sound right to the back so that it doesn't get in the way of all the melodies and the main elements. Let's hear that. And we want it really quiet, just so it's like sitting there in the background and kind of creating a bed, a harmonic bed for the track. Okay, then I'm just going to freeze this because every time I hit play, the reverb's going to ring out when I hit pause, so it can get a bit annoying, so I'm just going to freeze that quickly. Then the next thing we're going to make is the main pluck. So this pluck is divided basically into two layers. We've got the bass layer, and then we've got like the motif layer. So let's just grab the bass chords here, and I'll show you the MIDI if you haven't already downloaded it. This is the MIDI, so it's basically just following power chords. So you'll see that we've got a B flat chord here with the F on top, which is the perfect fifth, and it just follows this pattern all the way through. So we're not using any major or minor thirds in there. And then just on this third chord, instead of playing the fifth down in that octave, we're playing it up an octave higher. All right, so let's design the sound for it, and we're going to be using Wavetable for this. And this is a really, really simple sound too. So with this, we basically just leaving it as a sine wave, and pretty much all the character comes from having all these different frequencies in there, all different tones. And it ends up building like a really nice, round, harmonically pleasing sound. So just how it sounds on its own. You can hear it's already so nice, and you can hear it already sounds really nice. So we just want to shape this a bit. We're going to go into the amp envelope and just bring down this point here. So the sustain's at -infinity, and the decay, I wanted it around 300 milliseconds. So let's just make it 300. So it's nice and short and plucky. And that's it pretty much for the source sound. From there, all we're going to be doing is side chaining it and basically boosting the sub a bit. So we're going to add a compressor here, and we don't have a kick in there yet, so I'm just going to leave the compressor there and just open it up and turn on the side chain so that we're ready to add it when we do have the kick. Let's add our EQ. Okay, so now we're just going to be using EQ to basically boost the sub. I want that lowest harmonic to really come through. And that sounds good to me. And then we just want to basically loop this through. So the whole loop here is going to be 16 bars. And you'll hear in the finished version that there's like quite a lot of delay and stuff on this. But we're not going to add it over here. What we're going to do is process the two layers together. So let's build the second layer before we do any other processing. Okay, so in here you'll see we have a motif MIDI channel here. Okay, so we just drag this new motif onto here. And basically what this motif is doing is it's following the groove of the chords. So if we had to zoom in here and look at where the melody is actually landing, it's landing on each chord with this little extra note in here. And that really kind of makes it feel like one sound together with the bass chords and keeps things simple and grooving really nicely. So these are the notes that we're using, and you can see here we're going from D up to D and then down to A. So again, we're just playing with that power chord, the tonic and the perfect fifth. And we're going to be making another similar sound to the bass sound over here. So I'm actually just going to steal the wavetable from here. I'm going to Control C and Control V onto this. And let's just hear how that sounds. And together with the wavetable, with the bass pluck, you can hear that it really grooves quite nicely. But what I want to do is just change the sound up a bit. So we're going to be using a triangle for this one. And then we're going to be kind of making the filter open and close. So I'm going to bring down this filter all the way down to the bottom. And then I'm going to assign the amp envelope to the frequency. So here we can come down to amp. Just make sure you click on this so that it turns white here. And then just drag that up. And we're also going to add a little bit of a pitch envelope to this. So here on envelope 2, I'm just going to turn this up a little bit. And it's going to sound strange now because we haven't adjusted envelope 2. I'm just going to click on envelope 2 and bring down the decay and the sustain to 0. And that's just going to make it a little bit more percussive and give it a bit more of a transient on it. So yeah, that's sounding like nice and hollow and percussive, and that's basically the sound that I'm going for. But now what kind of brings this sound to life is the way you process it afterwards. And for that, we're going to be using convolution reverb. And convolution reverb comes with Ableton. You have Ableton Live Suite. I'm not sure if it comes with standard. I doubt it comes with light version. So make sure you have Suite if you want to use convolution reverb. Otherwise, I think you can also download it as a Max for Live device. But again, I'm not sure if Max for Live works with light or standard. So here's convolution reverb, and there's a specific preset we're going to be using, and it's called Ambience in Small Rooms, and it is this noise short room. It sounds like this. We're going to just bring it down a bit, and we're going to also shorten the size, the decay. We're going to bring down the decay quite a lot. And now you can hear this has like a really nice room effect to it. Puts it into a space. Probably bring it down a bit more. Okay, and then we're going to be using OTT to kind of squash the sound a little bit together and flatten it out a bit, bring a little bit more high end into it. So how we're going to do this is we're just going to increase the time here, and that's going to, you'll basically hear the effect of it. If we have the time all the way to the left, it really, really squashes the sound and brings out all that reverb and kind of kills all the dynamics of it. If we increase it, we kind of preserve some of the dynamics while still getting that nice compressed feeling. And then what I want to do is just blend this signal in with the dry signal. So we're going to bring down the amount to like 30 to 40%. And so with and without. Okay, and then I want to make it a little more dirty. So we're going to add overdrive. That's going to distort the sound a bit. But as it comes standard like this, it's a bit too strong. So what I want to do is just filter the signal so that we're only distorting really the higher mid-range. And then I want to bring down this dry wet a little bit. And bring down the drive a touch. And the tone. So with and without. Could maybe bring down the dry wet a little bit more. Okay, so all together these are sounding like this now. Okay, so now what I want to do is drag this out so that it covers all 16 bars. Make sure that your loop functions on. If you drag your clip and it doesn't actually repeat what's inside there, that's probably because you've got loop switched off. And then we're going to group these two together and process them even more. So for this, we're going to be using a delay, and the delay is basically going to be very rhythmic, and it's going to cause the pluck to repeat on itself and basically drive a higher paced groove than how it originally sounds. So what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be using the 1 over here. So I think that is 1/16th note delay. Yeah, because basically how this delay works is it does it in divisions of 16th notes. So this is 1/16th, this is 2/16th, 3/16th, 4/16th, etc. So now this is a really short delay. And that's what we want, but it's too obvious now, so I'm just going to bring down the dry wet. And I'm going to bring up the feedback a bit. And I don't really want the sub to be bouncing around as much. I do still want it in there, so I'm just going to filter this down a slight bit like that.
Just a quick break before we go back to the tutorial. If you find these type of videos helpful, we can highly recommend the PML Academy with over 35 full-length online courses, spreading over topics like writing chords and melodies or arranging your songs to producing entire songs from start to finish. So check out the link in the description to see what's inside the All Courses bundle exactly.
Okay, and then lastly, a little bit of EQ. We can just try and bring out the mid-range a bit more on this. There we go, and yeah, that's flowing quite nicely. All right, next up is we have a sort of like a background kind of lead, and this is quite typical. I've heard it in a lot of the tracks that get released on Selected. Usually what they sounds like they do is they take a saw wave and then just soak it in like 100% wet reverb and push it right to the back, and it has this like really kind of moody feel to it. So yeah, we're going to be using the MIDI called Melody over here, and we're going to just drop it here. Should convert it into a MIDI channel if it is an audio channel. And this is what it looks like. So if I just load up wavetable onto this, you'll hear what it sounds like. So we're going to make it a saw wave and just filter it out a bit. Okay, so you can hear it kind of feels a little bit out of time, and that's because this MIDI was designed with the filter in mind. So when we do the filtering, it'll start sounding right. So what we want to do is zoom in to this first note and kind of sweep it up. So I'm going to bring down this frequency like all the way down to 100 Hz, and then we'll open it up so that kind of reaches its maximum loudness in the last 16th. Yeah, I think is that a 16th? Just basically at the end of the note. And we're going to bring it up to about 2 kHz, and then we're going to bend this by holding Alt and just dragging this down so that it becomes exponential. And then what we should hear is this kind of whipping open of the filter. And yeah, that works. So now what we want to do is basically copy that filtering to all the other ones. So just like this, and same there, and same there. And then we're going to be adding a ton of reverb to this. So it's a super simple sound, as you can hear. Oh, another thing we want to do is probably bring up this amp so that it's not really plucky. It's kind of just a sustained sound. Okay, so now we're going to bring up this dry wet, again, like really high, 90%, make the decay really long. And I'm just going to bring down the high cut a bit and filter out some of this top end on the diffusion network. And make sure that when you do this, you copy that automation across to the next 8 bars. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this sound. We might want to just throw in a little bit of EQ just to check that the low end hasn't got any rumble in it. Okay, and the last thing for all our musical stuff before we start adding the drums is to create like a texture. So I noticed in the original Yuma Meds remix, he has this like really, it almost sounds like somebody walking on leaves or just something crackly like a fireplace or something. So I found 2 samples from the Organic Woodlands preset pack on PML, and it's these 2 ones here, and I basically processed them in a way to turn them more into like a texture than they currently are. So if we just drag this on here, you'll see it's really quite dynamic. It's got lots of big peaks and small peaks, and it's basically just sounds like somebody walking on leaves. You can hear leaves breaking. But what I want is to just get like a little bit of the crackly bit. So if we just turn on warping and then turn on the loop race, we can zoom in on a section where we've got more consistent peaks, something like this. And it doesn't sound very good on its own like that, but you'll see what happens when we process it with the other sound. So the other sample is this lacewood one. And let's just drag that below there. And this is going to be kind of the main sound. This one's just going to be creating like a crackle for us. Let me just play the sample as it is, more of a hiss. So we're going to, it's a similar sound, but it's got this really nice like hiss from the recording, which sits around here. And if we just loop that all the way through, that's going to create like this really nice texture for the whole track to sit on top of. So let's just blend these together now. I'm going to turn down this one quite a lot. I just want to turn off warping to make sure that this isn't being warped to a specific BPM, and then turn it back on. Okay, and then yeah, we can loop this again. Drag this out. And they're kind of sitting quite statically in the stereo field right now because the loop is so short. So another thing I want to do is grab 2 auto pans, and we're going to basically just auto pan both of them together. So I'm going to group this so that, and we're going to just turn on an auto pan. Even better, what we could do is cut that out, paste it on each individual channel, and then slightly adjust the rate of one of them so that they aren't completely in sync. Okay, and then all we need to do is just EQ it a bit. Got a bit of rumble in it. I kind of want to just bring out a little more of the high end in it. Alright, so now the trick is to just blend this in a way where it's noticeable in the track, but it's not drawing any attention to itself. So let's just blend it in until we can really feel it. Okay, I think that works quite nicely. Let's group all of these, and we'll just call this group instruments and give it a nicer color and color it all nicely. Okay, and then we are going to be adding our drums next. So the drums are kind of simple. We're really going to just be using a kick, hat, clap, and a shaker loop. So let's get started with that. All right, so first let's do our kick, and I'm just going to create a new MIDI channel under here. And I'm just going to double click, and now we only want this loop to be stretched up to 1.2 here on this bar, so that all we need to do is just add one note at C3, and that'll be our kick drum MIDI done, and we just drag it out. Okay, so now we can just grab our kick and just double click on that, and this is also from the Basic Waves Artist Kick Pack, which is also on the PML website, and let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so the groove is coming together. I want the kick to be kind of a little bit louder, so I'm just going to boost it a little bit more. And we need to make sure that we sidechain. Remember, we turned on the sidechain on this bass sound here. We haven't actually routed it yet, so now we just need to take sidechain input from the kick, and then we bring down the threshold. And I don't want the sidechain to be so long, so I'm going to bring up this filter frequency here so that it's only checking the high end of the kick, and that makes for a very short sidechain. If I drag this down, you'll see. We'll bring up the release a little bit more to like 40 or 50. And then I'm going to copy this sidechain and put it on the entire instrument bus, because I do want the other stuff to be sidechained, but not as deep. So we'll bring this ratio down. Okay, that sounds good. Let's add our clap. So the clap is this one. And we'll just double click on that and then double click here. And we can place a note at 1.2 and at 1.4. And then just extend this all the way across. Okay, so all I want to do with this clap is to basically just take out that reverb tail, because I want to make a different type of tail with the delay. So let's switch this to one-shot mode, and then we can bring down this brace over here and then add a bit of a fade out. Okay, and then we're going to add a delay to it. And what we're going to do here is turn off sync and then bring down the time to around 20 milliseconds. And we're going to bring down the feedback to 0. And then what you'll hear is we get this really nice bounce in the clap. Oh, we have to make sure that it's on ping pong. Now you can hear this really nice, like almost bounces from left to right and gives it a really nice wide tail. Let's bring down the dry wet to around 40. Yeah, 37 sounds good. And then we want to add our hat. So here's the hat from Deep Premium. So let's just double click here and add a hat on the offbeat and extend that out. The hat's a bit long, so I'm just going to shorten it a little bit. Again, fade it out. And I want to take out some of the low end from it, or the mid-range, because it's kind of a bit too heavy, I think. Okay, so the last thing we're going to be adding is our shaker loop, and it's this one. And this one just works straight out the box. We don't actually need to process it. It sounds good to me, just as it is. Just need to set the volume there. Okay, so that's basically our loop done, but there is just one point I want to make, and that is a lot of the selected sound revolves around having a strong vocal that basically carries the track. So pretty much every single selected track I've ever listened to has like a full vocal, meaning it has like verses and choruses. It's not just a little vocal snippet here and there. So your best bet is to work with somebody. If you want to make an original track that stands the test of time, you need to use an original vocal and work with a nice talented vocalist. But I understand if you're just starting out, it's not easy to find an original vocalist. So you're probably just going to be working with samples. So I've just gone into my sample library and found this sample. Unfortunately, I can't provide it to you because it's not produced by me or PML. So if you want to add a vocal, this is just to show you how the track would feel with the vocal. So I'm just going to drag this in here, and this is already in the right key. We just need to warp it into time. I think it's at 130, so let's just type in 130. And then I'm just going to bring down the volume, and I think I'm actually going to put it into this bus here so that it gets that side chain. Make it really clean. And let's just set the volume.
I see you and I'm there to love you every day. Wasted.
Okay, and then the last thing I want to do is also to just add a little bit of reverb to all of the drums together. So what I'm going to do is add all of the drums to a group. So I'll just hit Control G, and then I'm going to send it 100% to this reverb channel here. And now if I solo this, it'll be very obnoxious. So we just need to process this a bit. I'm going to shorten the decay. I'm going to take out all the low end and soften the top end. And then sometimes playing with density and scale, you can get a nice soft reverb. Okay, and then we can EQ this reverb afterwards to clean it up even more. Just take up some of the high end too. Okay, and then we need to just mix this in to taste. So just until we can feel it, not really notice it too obvious. There we go. So if I turn this off, you'll be able to hear it disappear and reappear as I toggle it on and off. Okay, and that just kind of glues the drums together nicely. Alright, then lastly we'll add a little bit of a limiter on here just to push it to its peak, and we'll just turn the gain up. Alright, let's listen to our final loop. I'll play it once with the vocal and then once without the vocal. Let's just play it without the vocal. Okay, that's a cool little loop. I think it could potentially turn into a nice tune. Yeah, if you want to take a deeper dive into these start to finish type style courses, we have some linked below. They're full scale courses, and we go into a lot more detail and build complete full length tracks. So yeah, make sure to check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.